Alright guys, so I haven't really covered politics much yet on this channel, but it is something I'm interested in. Why don't you guys let me know if you want more content like this? We have a Tupac and Biggie video coming out next week about how I believe Diddy was probably involved. We uncover some interesting stuff there. If you do enjoy the content, please do like, subscribe. It really helps me out. But conspiracy today is that Ukraine has always been losing the war against Russia. And basically, its defeat is inevitable, that the U.S. has just been propping it up. So we've all seen videos like this, and I'm just going to play this. This is recent. I think this was actually posted earlier today about Russian aggression and Ukrainian desertions in Ukraine.
Alexander is one of the tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers who walked away from the front line to return home. For 6 months, he watched his fellow servicemen die in Russian attacks.
We just wanted to live. We had no combat experience. We were just ordinary working people from a village.
He remembers very little from the year he spent at home in Lviv because of the concussions he suffered. He's since returned and is being trained with a different battalion. But official figures show that more than 90,000 cases have been opened into instances of soldiers deserting since Russia invaded in 2022, with a sharp increase over the past year. A number of them don't return after being granted a break or medical leave. Exhausted by the war, they're both physically and psychologically scarred.
There were many cases where someone went to see their family for 10-15 days and thought, well, screw it, I'm not going back.
In an effort to address manpower shortages, Ukrainian lawmakers approved an amnesty in August for first-time offenders who voluntarily returned to their units. Prosecutors said in early December that 8,000 servicemen returned in November alone. This soldier was one of them. He explains what made him walk away.
Even just staying under constant shelling results in a gradually damaged mental state. You go crazy little by little. You're constantly under stress, huge stress. And you lose control of yourself.
Going against his family's advice, he decided to return. But the number of Ukrainian troops deserting is still growing, and the government is struggling to find new recruits. It represents a critical challenge for Ukraine, which is losing territory to Russia at the fastest rate since the early days of the 2022 invasion.
Okay, and this is something that's easy to politicize. I don't want to. I think war is a horrible thing. I feel bad for everyone involved. But I just want to go and analyze my original claim, which is that Ukraine has been losing in many ways since the start of the war. And if we look at the beginning of the war, Ukraine's population was around 40 million. Russia's population was around 150 million. So Russia outnumbers Ukraine 4-1 almost. And if we take a look at this, due to how many people have fled the country, and granted mostly women, children, a lot of men though, 10 million people have left Ukraine, around 25% of the population. And so Ukraine's sitting at around 30 million now. They've lost a quarter of their population since the war began. Who knows when they will come back? Now, granted, I did do a little digging. People say that up to 1 million Russians have left Russia. But if you just do the math, and that's the higher end of the estimates, 1 million Russians, that's about 0.6 or 0.7% of Russians have left Russia. And 25% of Ukrainians have left Ukraine. Now, examining the casualties, Russian casualties death-wise are estimated to be around 200,000. Ukrainian casualties are said to be around 80,000. Now, there's a lot of talk that both countries are kind of under-reporting on their casualties. Who knows what the death toll really is, right? But if we're to take them at their face value, Russia is killing twice as many, over twice as many. Or Ukraine is killing twice as many Russians, is what I'm meaning to say. Russia's taking twice as many casualties. But if we take the fact that, again, Russia has over 3 people for Ukrainians 1. And secondly, if you don't know and haven't kept up, Most of Russia's casualties, or at least tens of thousands of them, up to probably around 100,000, are convicts, are foreign mercenaries, recruits that they've brought into Russia, granted visas from different countries and just thrown them on the front line. We have documented tens of thousands of Wagner mercenaries that were prisoners that died and fought Ukrainian units. So when we look at these casualty numbers, we imagine that Russia has not been sending their best. At least at first, they were not sending their best. So we've examined the loss in population in both countries. Again, Ukraine has lost 25% of its population. Another statistic that kind of shows the gravity of the situation, and this article is outdated. This is published in July of 2023. I tried to get more updated figures and couldn't find them, but as of that time, 700,000 Ukrainian children have been taken from Ukraine to Russia since the start of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. That number is likely much higher now. So you look at the casualties that Russia has taken, 200,000 according to reports. They have taken 700,000 Ukrainian children, and they have been indoctrinating them as Russians. So that really offsets any casualties that they've taken in the war long term. That also brings the number of Russians who have fled Russia down. It offsets that, right? So now we're looking at maybe a 0.3% decrease in Russia's population as opposed to Ukraine's population, which we're estimating to be at least 25%. And if you add this 700,000 Ukrainian children have left, we're getting close to a third of Ukrainians who have either fled the country, been kidnapped and taken into Russia, and again, this statistic is probably much higher now, and just battlefield casualties and injuries. So Ukraine has been doing well, undeniably. They are the David battling the Goliath, but how long can that last? Because much of the impetus behind their performance has been backing by the United States and its allies. So the U.S., according to a document that I found, has spent at least $100 billion. Estimates now put it closer to $174 billion that the United States has given to Ukraine since the start of the war. And just to give you guys an idea, that's about a fourth to a third of what we spent on the war in Iraq. You know how long we were there. You know how big of a deal that was for us, just to prop up Ukraine. If you include the money that the allies of the U.S. have given to Ukraine, it sits at around $250 billion. So when we look at this conflict and we look at the fact that Russia, before the war, owned 7% of Ukraine. After the war, they're sitting right around 18%. So they have 3x their territory. Ukraine has lost about a third of their population, while Russia has lost about 1%. And in addition to the fact that the only reason Ukraine is performing so well is because of all of the funding that they've been given by the U.S. and its allies, how long can Ukraine keep this going? They're facing a desertion crisis right now. They'll probably get more funding by the U.S. and its allies, but I don't know how much Ukraine can take. And I really do believe that Ukraine has been losing this fight since the early days of the conflict. So if you enjoyed this video, if you want to see more, please do subscribe to my channel. My co-creator and I strive to bring you content weekly. And until next time, thanks.